Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 18, Distant Voices. This episode aired April 10th, 1995. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about the previous episode, Visionary?
No, it was perfect.
I think it was perfect. It was very good. It was a good episode. Good podcast.
That was a hard episode to beat.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. I looked up the director of that episode, and he had directed hundreds of episodes of classic TV, including Mission Impossible, Falcon Crest, the Doris Day Show, all kinds of stuff, but also Baywatch and Starsky and Hutch. Just quite a combination.
Yeah, he had an incredible directing resume. It was like a few episodes of every show you could think of.
Right, and he directed two of our favorite episodes of this season, actually three, if you include Visionary. He also directed Civil Defense and Past Tense Part 1.
All great episodes.
Yeah.
He clearly knew what he was doing.
Yeah, it's just an interesting resume if you look him up on IMDb.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this episode.
Absolutely.
In the cold open, Bashir and Garak are dining together in the Replimat. Garak gives Julian a Cardassian holosuite program for his birthday that's coming up in a few days.
Don't they make a wonderful couple?
Yes, they're very cute. Julian says thank you, but isn't thrilled with his Cardassian Enigma tale, which is apparently like a mystery novel. He complains that the trouble with these stories is the suspects are always guilty, which Garak thinks is great.
Because the challenge is determining exactly who is guilty of what.
Right.
This seems so wonderfully Cardassian, and I think it fits with Garak's very strange view of what Cardassia should be.
Yeah, he has this, perfection view of it.
Yeah.
Like, everything there is exactly how it should be.
Right.
Which is never good. Yeah.
That's it. It is almost like a perfectionist view. Cardassia should function as the propaganda makes Cardassia appear.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
And it's funny for somebody like Garak, who is worldly and quite cynical, to really hold on to that.
Well, we talked about this before, that he has to feel that way about Cardassia. Otherwise, his exile here doesn't have any teeth.
And I guess his entire life to that point wouldn't really have any meaning.
Right, exactly. Garak sees that Julian is disappointed in his gift, but really it turns out that he's just kind of depressed at turning 30 because it marks the end of his youth.
Huh.
Garak says on Cardassia, advanced age is a sign of power and dignity. Here we go again with him being impressed with the perfection of Cardassia.
As I get older, I kind of agree with that more and more.
That it's a sign of power and dignity?
Yeah.
Bashir says that he has the right to be grumpy about his own birthday, and Garak agrees. And then Quark and a big, scary-looking alien appear, and Quark is a bit hesitant, but says his friend Altovar is looking to purchase a small quantity of biomimetic gel, and he's wondering if Bashir knows where he might purchase some. But Julian says biomimetic gel is a restricted substance, and the sale is strictly prohibited by Federation law. The creepy alien says he'll pay whatever is necessary in his weird, scratchy voice.
Yeah.
And Julian says the gel is hazardous and it's not for sale at any price. The alien walks away, and Julian tells Quark that even trying to obtain the substance is a felony. Quark says he knows, but Lethians are incredibly stubborn. This is where my phone kept turning Lethian into Lutherans. So it, I didn't notice until later when I read my notes, and it said, but Lutherans are incredibly stubborn. I thought that was great.
Well, you would know something about that coming from the Midwest.
I guess so. Did you also notice here in this scene that there was a luggage cart in the background?
I did not.
Someone is finally starting to deal with the luggage at Deep Space Nine. It's like now we have a sky cap. That was so funny. Yeah. You got to go back and see that.
I'll have to look at that. I have to ask, where is Odo in all of this? Here's a guy trying to buy controlled substances from Quark on the station, and Odo isn't right in his face immediately.
Yeah. And why did they go and tell Odo?
Yeah.
Somebody should have told Odo. Yeah, for sure. Or maybe somebody tried, but everything goes a little south after this scene.
Bashir could just press his communicator and say, Odo, I think we might have a problem here.
If it's a felony.
Right.
Whatever felony means in space, I don't know.
Maybe he could get away with it by saying, oh, it's my culture to obtain biomimetic gel. And then the Federation would be very hands-off.
But also, we're not in Federation space.
Yeah, you're correct. I keep forgetting that Bajor isn't part of the Federation.
Right. Julian now enters the infirmary and finds the Lutheran rummaging through his shelves.
I think you mean Lethian.
Lethian.
That doesn't seem like a very Lutheran thing to do.
No. When Julian shouts at him, the alien grabs Julian by the head, and an electric charge comes from his fingers, zapping Julian's head for a really long time. Julian fights back, but then he falls to the ground as the alien just walks out, leaving him unconscious. When Julian fell to the floor in this scene, he very awkwardly moved his feet out from under him so that he wouldn't, hit the wall. He should have practiced that more. That was really awkward.
Maybe that's why they use stunt doubles in a lot of those scenes where people are getting shot and things.
Yeah, like in the previous episode.
They can do better, more convincing, bounce off a bulkhead.
Yeah. Oh, his fall was very not convincing for sure.
Yeah.
Although we always make fun of them too when they use the stunt doubles because you can tell it's not the actors, so I guess they can't win with us.
Well, I guess they could at least try and get a stunt double who looked something like the person.
Yeah. Well, from here we cue the theme song.
Yep.
So after the credits, Julian comes to and the lights in the infirmary are flickering and the computer screens are all staticky. He calls security and then ops, but nobody answers. Even the computer isn't responding to him.
Yeah, everything is pretty messed up.
Yeah, he can hear some distant whispering, and he starts looking around the room and out into the promenade. For some reason, there's a mirror just outside the door, which he looks into, seeing that he now appears to have gray hair coming in his temples, I guess because he turned 30 or something while he was passed out.
Oh, yeah. And all the lights on the promenade appear to be off, too. It seems very dark.
Yeah, it's very dark and creepy.
Has something else broken on Deep Space Nine?
He hears some crashing and Quarks, and he enters the dark bar really quietly, kind of ducking down. And he finds Quark cowering behind the bar as someone or something is throwing things around in the distance, so we keep hearing all these crashes.
And smashing the place up.
Julian doesn't get any useful info out of Quark, who is too afraid. He keeps saying he'll kill us.
He says, if we move, he'll find us.
Yeah. Eventually, Quark runs away, and Julian heads out onto the promenade to follow him, but he's nowhere to be seen.
And Bashir shouts, show yourself into the darkness, and a chair goes flying over his head against the wall. Quark must get through a lot of chairs. Last week, we lost chairs as well.
Yeah, we lost him twice because we had that fight in the bar twice.
Ah, but that's only one chair in temporal terms. It was the same chair.
Except it wasn't because it was the different set. Different props on the same set.
Ah.
But yes.
Yeah, you're going through the prop budget.
Yeah, exactly. Julian finds tea just pouring from the replicator in the replimat. There's no cup underneath it. It's just pouring out. He goes into security where he finds Garak, who says the station has suffered a mass system failure and everyone is missing. Garak wonders if it's due to some space virus or a Dominion plot.
If you notice, he's got a lot more grey all of a sudden in his hair.
Yeah, he keeps getting grayer.
Yeah, it's like every scene, there's a little bit more.
Definitely. Julian hears the distant whispers again. Garak can't hear it, and then he points out that Julian's hair is turning gray, so he's seeing it now. Julian gets phasers and flashlights for each of them. They decide to split up and meet back on the promenade in an hour. Bashir is poking around in the dark looking for anyone when the lights in the hallway start turning off behind him, and it dramatically backs him into a turbo lift, just as the Lethian grabs the doors and tries to get in. Julian kicks his hands, and the Lethian falls back so the doors can close. Now his hair is completely white on the sides. I thought that scene was really strange, how the lights were somehow scaring him and chasing him down the hallway. I couldn't understand why that was so scary. I would think you would just stand there while the lights were turning off, but it was really dramatic and the music was really dramatic.
Maybe Julian's seen a lot of horror movies and that's something they do there.
Maybe, I don't know. It was weird.
Question.
Yeah.
Was there some deeper meaning to the replicator just making Tarkalian tea, or was that just showing that it was broken?
Yeah, I don't know. I wondered that too, but it didn't seem to mean anything.
Yeah.
Just maybe that it was the kind of tea that he would get or something.
And
I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't seem meaningful.
Right. I couldn't think of anything other than it was broken because there was no cup.
Right. Although he had to say the kind of tea out loud like it meant something. Now we're in the turbo lift, and something, probably the Lethian, is trying to smash its way through the top of the turbo lift. But the lift stops, and Julian gets out before the alien breaks through. Then he hears shouting.
Those muffled voices you can hear, you can make out they're actually Odo, Miles, Dax, and Kira.
So now he hears shouting, and he enters a room. Not sure what room we're in, but Miles, Kira, Odo, and Dax are all shouting at each other. When Julian enters, he's aged even more, again. Now his face looks wrinkled and older, and his hair is completely gray.
I think every scene he appears in, every time they do a cut, he gets older.
I certainly noticed that every time there was a commercial break.
Yeah.
When we'd come back, he'd be 20 years older. Odo and Miles are yelling at each other about what to do next. Dax says, we have to neutralize the Lethian first. She wants to get phasers and hunt him down, but Miles thinks the Lethian is too dangerous. Then Kira and Odo accuse Miles of being chicken or in league with the alien, and Dax is weirdly aggressive in this scene.
They do all seem to be behaving a little oddly.
Yeah, and so Bashir asks the computer to scan his crewmates because everyone is acting so strangely, but the computer doesn't respond.
Apart from Odo, though, he seems to be acting his pretty normal level of paranoid suspiciousness.
That's true. Bashir asks where everyone else is, but nobody knows. And then he hears those distant voices again. He wants to get internal sensors online before they do anything drastic. Miles thinks he might be able to repair them from a nearby computer processing junction, so they all go together, still acting weird.
So do you think, at this point, Julian is asking himself, has another alien psychic virus escaped on the station? Has somebody beamed a Klingon straight into ops again?
Probably.
It kind of reminded me of Dramatis Persona up to this point.
Oh, when everybody was acting weird?
Yes.
Well, we head to this processing junction. Miles finds the entire sensor array is burned out, and there's extensive damage to the computer's central processor. He thinks he can salvage the subspace communication relay, so they could at least contact Bajor. Odo is skulking around, keeping an eye open for the alien, when he bumps into Kira by accident, and she shouts at him to knock it off, saying he's getting on her nerves. She's even crankier than Season 1 Kira in this episode.
It's super cranky Kira.
Julian is barking orders at everyone. It's very weird that nobody knows how to do anything without him, because normally Dax and Miles would be handling this while Kira and Odo would be protecting them.
Right.
So everything is just off-center.
Well, Miles earlier said he couldn't fix anything.
Right. So Miles gets something working, saying he's receiving an audio signal. And now in this audio signal, we hear Sisko and Dax saying they've done everything they can think of, but they haven't been able to counteract the telepathic damage. They say that Julian is in some kind of telepathically induced coma, and he's going to be dead in 3 hours if they can't get him out of it. So Julian looks at a tricorder, and when he scans himself for brain activity, all he gets are low-frequency delta waves. So Julian figures out what the voices said are true, and he must be in a coma.
So all of this is happening in Julian's head.
Apparently so. After the dramatic ad break, Kira says this sounds crazy, but the tricorder shows no life signs of any of them. Julian says this is why everyone is acting strangely. Nobody else is really there, and when he's talking to them, he's really just talking to himself. Somehow he's determined that they each embody a different aspect of his own personality, like different voices in his head. Miles represents his doubt and disbelief. Kira represents his aggression.
Very much so.
And Odo represents his sense of fear and suspicion. He tells Dax she's always represented his confidence and sense of adventure, which makes no sense, but okay.
Interesting.
Odo asks what the Lethian represents. He assumes he represents the telepathic damage that the real Lethian caused to his mind. He thinks the station represents his mind, and if the station could be repaired, his mind would be repaired. This is a little hazy to me, but okay.
It's representative of his actual mind.
I guess so. Well, just then, the Lethian grabs Dax and drags her away. Julian runs, sort of, slowly and awkwardly toward her, but it's too late and she's gone.
Well, he suddenly got a lot older.
Right, now he's a little old guy. Because now he's even sort of hunched over, like he's really old, and he can't really run. Except then what's weird is the next scene he's zapped into playing tennis with Garak on the promenade. The actor who plays Garak must play tennis, by the way, because he definitely picks up the ball by using his racket and pressing against his foot, which is something that you learn as a kid when you play tennis. Because that's what I would always do, too, when I played tennis as a kid. So I thought that was funny. Well, Bashir is older again, and Garak tells him he's running out of time.
Hey, it's part of your tennis podcast again.
That's true. We're back to a tennis podcast. I don't have much to say about Bashir's form, but I think Garak was definitely a tennis player. Bashir says he needs to get the main computer online, so Garak suggests that he get to ops. Now Bashir is in a dark hall with a bunch of people lying on the floor suffering from something. Sisko is giving medical orders to the nurse of how to help them. Bashir says, "Oh, you represent my professionalism and my skill."
Yeah, Sisko seems to be a doctor.
Right. He tells Sisko to come with him to ops because the station can't be repaired without his help. But before they get anywhere, the Lethian comes through the wall and grabs Sisko. Julian starts to panic and runs away, running right into the Lethian. He tries shooting him, but the phaser has no impact. The Lethian says, "You're going to stay right here on the station while I destroy you piece by piece. And when all the best parts of you are gone, then and only then will I put you out of your misery." So dramatic.
Yes.
Julian runs away from him.
And ominously, the Lethian calls after him saying, "You can't escape, Doctor. Run if you want, but you can outrun death."
Yeah, it's so grim, this whole thing. It's like because Julian was worried about turning 30. Now we're talking about him outrunning death. I don't know. It seemed a little dramatic, overly dramatic.
Well, it's Julian's mind, so I have the feeling dramatic would be part of Julian's makeup.
Yeah, I have some notes about that in my analysis section. But when we come back from the ad break, yet another dramatic ad break, Julian is even older. He finds Kira dead on the floor, and he finds Odo melting away.
Oh, dissolving Odo.
Yeah. Bashir is now all hunched over with age, and he says to himself that the Lethian is trying to rob me of my confidence, my intelligence, my strength. Again, very overly dramatic.
Yes.
He says he has to get to Ops, and Odo, before melting completely away, tells him to use the conduits. Now he's crawling through the conduits where he finds Miles hiding. Miles says Julian can't stop the Lethian. He looks like he's got one foot in the grave already, which is true.
Yes. I believe we should now call him Miles O'Downer.
Yeah, for sure. Julian says he likes the real chief better than this version, so he likes the real one more than the version of Miles in his head.
Yeah.
They crawl out of the conduits, but end up back on the promenade.
And I like this little touch of how they're looking at one of the displays, and it's actually showing Julian in the real world, and all his vitals are dropping.
Oh, right. Yeah, they're showing his vital signs.
Yeah.
They hear shouting and quarks, and they find everyone standing over Julian's younger normal self, unconscious on a table, while Quark is taking bets on how much longer Julian will live. That seems like Quark.
Yeah.
Julian wants to bet that he'll survive, but then the body on the table changes from Julian to Miles, and then Miles turns into the Lethian and grabs Quark by the throat. It was very confusing. Julian runs out, but he falls to the floor, breaking his hip just as Garak finds him. Another ad break.
So in theory, he can't even walk anymore.
Yeah, after the ad break, Garak says, "Well, Doctor, it was a good game while it lasted." But he tells Garak to help him up, which he does, and he limps along to Ops.
I don't see how you would walk with a broken hip.
It would be pretty difficult. I mean, Kira did it, but she was hobbling along.
Oh, yeah, but providing Kira has a limb to hop on, she would hop to achieve her mission.
Right. Bashir is now, I don't know, maybe 120 years old at this point as he stumbles along. We find that Ops is decorated for a birthday party, and some woman starts singing happy birthday to him. She puts a birthday hat on his head and kisses his cheek.
The birthday hat thing was such a funny touch.
Yeah, just random.
I'm like, that's a really weird change of tone.
Yeah, and Garak says Julian has a fascinating mind, which, really, does he? It's not that interesting, I have to say. All he's done is see versions of himself and played tennis.
Yeah.
He asks Garak to take him to the engineering station. He takes the birthday hat off as he talks about trying to get the computer working again by bypassing disabled systems. He asks Garak to open a panel, which he does, and a bunch of tennis balls fly out of the wall, knocking Bashir to the floor. He grabs his hip and says, "Oh, my tennis balls," which this was the moment I felt we truly descended into nonsense when he said that.
Yes.
I am like, did he just say, "Oh, my tennis balls"? And yes, he did. Oh, my God.
Do you think that was scripted?
I don't know. It was very funny.
Yeah.
Well, Garak says the damage to the station is too extensive to be repaired. Bashir gets himself up off the floor and opens another panel, which drops even more tennis balls on him. Tennis balls on the floor, by the way, very dangerous for anyone, but especially people with poor mobility and failing eyesight.
I would think so.
And now Bashir is tired of this naysaying version of Garak. By the way, he's aged again, and he looks like a muppet at this point. He looks completely ridiculous. He says he's been thinking, why did the Lethian kill everyone but Garak? He wonders what part of himself is represented by Garak. Eventually, he says he thinks Garak doesn't belong in his mind at all. And then Garak morphs into the Lethian, who says, the Doctor has put up an entertaining struggle. He tells Julian it's time to give up, because that's what he's always done. He says he knows everything that goes on in Julian's head. He knows he wanted to be a tennis player when he was younger. And when Julian says he wasn't good enough to play professionally, the Lethian says he's lying. He knew his parents wouldn't approve of it, so he just gave up and became a doctor instead.
Interesting.
Then he says in medical school, he should have been first in his class, but on the final exam, he supposedly made a mistake. The Lethian says he didn't make a mistake. He purposely answered the question wrong because he couldn't take the pressure.
Wow. That is a big reveal, that Julian purposely answered a question wrong, so he wouldn't be the valedictorian?
Right. He was only the salutatorian,
yeah,
as we covered way back in season 1.
Indeed.
Then what about Dax, the Lethian says. You like her, but instead of fight for her, you'd rather give up.
So he tells Bashir that he gave up too easily on Dax? I don't know. Season 1 Bashir was a little bit too stalky.
I mean, don't get me started on this again. Oh my God, I thought we were over this. But maybe when she says no, you should just move on, which is not what he did. Julian totters over to the turbolift and ends up back in medical. He realizes repairing the station from Ops was a mistake. The infirmary is the center of his world, not Ops. Julian is now so covered in old age makeup, I'm not sure he can see, and he can barely move his face. He says he doesn't think the Lethian can do much more to him here, or he would have done it already. He opens a panel and he does something which turns the lights back on. The Lethian points out his vitals on the nearby monitor and just tells him to give up. Julian says, "You don't know me as well as you think." This whole Muppet face thing, it's hard to watch at this point.
Really?
Yes.
I thought the makeup actually was very good at this point.
No. Wow. Okay. Julian says even if he'd been first in his class, he would have still chosen this assignment on DS9.
He also said that he was a good tennis player, but he's a great doctor. A lot of self-confidence there.
Yeah, I thought the confidence person was gone.
Yeah.
Then Julian tells the computer to activate a quarantine field around the Lethian and to begin sterilization, which somehow magically destroys the Lethian, and the now young Julian wakes up from his coma.
I like the way that Bashir finally figures out this is all in his mind, and he can do what he wants.
Right.
It took a long time.
Dax and Cisco are standing over his bed with the nurse who says everything is returning to normal. Julian says, "You'll never believe where I've been." Wow, okay. That's my reaction to that. So we open the episode in the Replimat, so we have to close in the Replimat with Julian and Garak. Julian says the real Lethian tripped a security alert when he broke into the infirmary, and he didn't get far before Odo arrested him. Apparently, the telepathic attacks of Lethians are almost always fatal, so he guesses he was lucky. But Garak says Cardassians don't believe in luck. He survived because he's strong. Julian says turning 30 doesn't seem so bad after feeling like he was 100 for a while.
Yes.
Garak finds it very interesting that his unconscious mind chose people he knows to represent the various parts of his personality, and somehow his mind casts Garak in the role of the villain. To think after all this time you still don't trust me. When Julian is about to justify that, Garak grabs his arm and says, "There's hope for you yet, Doctor." The end.
That was a very nice closing touch there.
That was a cute ending. And also in this scene, there's a Bajoran standing behind Garak holding one of those big cylindrical containers that we see quite frequently on the show.
Oh.
But it's really crowded and people keep ducking and going around it. It was so weird. There was that in this scene, and then in the other scene, there was the sky cap. I think you need to go back and watch that.
I think I will. I do think this is another point as well to Garak's characteristics of the true Cardassian. You survived because you were strong. That whole strength, duty, service thing, that seems to be so important to him.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is part of the reason of why they are friends like this. Julian seems to embody a lot of those characteristics that Garak would see as virtuous in Cardassian society. He's obviously clever. This has shown he has quite strong mental fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of things that Garak could relate to or saw them as, he's a good guy.
Yeah, maybe. Let me think about that.
Also, it could be just because he thought he was young and inexperienced and could turn him as an agent.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was thinking. If we think back to when they met, way back in like episode 2 of season 1, it seemed like Garak was kind of hovering around Bashir because he scared him and he could probably control him.
Yeah.
But maybe they didn't know yet what they were going to do with Garak. And then over time, that relationship has sort of evolved.
Yeah.
But I do think Bashir does represent a kind of innocence. And he's not this maybe old, jaded Starfleet or Federation member who has preconceived notions of Cardassia. So Garak can see him as someone that he can influence in terms of how great Cardassia is.
That's an interesting take, yes.
So I assume we've started the overanalysis. I forgot to ask you if you had any overanalysis, but
well,
go ahead.
Apparently we have.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of overanalysis on this one.
Well, there's really only one person in this entire episode. Right. So yeah, there's not too much to analyze.
I think a lot of my analysis on this one really kind of relates to episodes in the future, unfortunately.
Oh.
I know there's spoilers about Bashir that you know, and I'm not going to talk about them here. Knowing about Bashir in the future, and honestly, I don't think I've seen this episode probably more than twice. It makes me realize that things like him giving up the tennis was important. The fact that he didn't want to come first in the medical exams was also important. And if you also remember, when he played the racquetball-like game, he beat a Vulcan in the racquetball game.
Yeah, I remember, but sometimes, I mean, not every Vulcan can be great at it.
There are things in this episode that point to the decisions that Bashir made in the past. And watching that after seeing the future makes this episode actually more interesting, which is sort of odd.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we should spoil anything in the future based on some of the emails we've gotten. I know there are people watching along at the same speed, and I don't know a lot of things about what's coming, but there are a few things here and there that people have said on Twitter that I've picked up on, so I do know a few things, but I don't know the full character arc of anybody, and I don't know at all how it ends. Right. I don't know what happens in the last season. That I'm clueless to. But yeah, I appreciate that we're not going to spoil anything, but it's interesting to me because a lot of the stuff that happens here just feels like a throwaway episode. Yeah. So I'm glad that it's going to link to something more important later.
It's a soft link.
Okay. Okay. It's a Star Trek link.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Exactly.
Fair enough. Okay. Any other overanalysis?
And I think my final point for analysis is, out of all the characters, Quark actually seemed to be pretty accurate to what Quark is really like.
Yeah. Who did Quark represent? I guess his fear.
I don't know. Be.
I thought we already had fear in Miles.
Yeah.
Except then later he's doing the thing where he's taking bets, so Quark changed.
That's interesting.
A little inconsistent there.
So the Lethians are pretty nasty then.
Yeah, and ugly.
And they do things to your brain.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. They can just kill you by zapping you.
Right, and let your own mind tear itself apart.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I kept thinking about in this episode.
What's that?
This is Bashir's Nightmare on Elm Street.
And this alien is Freddy Krueger?
Yes.
Sure. All right, that's it for your overanalysis?
Yeah, that's really all I have.
A little light this week.
Very light.
Well, let's go to women in the future. There's not much to say here either, as we didn't really have the real characters here. My only irritation was the Lethian poking at Julian for giving up when Dax turned him down. And if this represents the inside of Julian's mind, then that means that's really what he thinks. That if he just tried harder, she'd come around. And it's just like, come on, no, leave her alone. No. She said no.
Well, perhaps in defense of Julian here, maybe the Lethian was representing the negative impacts of his mind and destroying the positive pieces of his personality. So it's the negative things. The stalker aspect of Bashir would have wanted to continue with Dax until he would be locked away, ideally.
The thing that annoyed me is the Lethian brought up 3 things.
Yeah.
One was, you gave up playing tennis. One was you came in second on your medical thing. And then the third one was, you should try harder with Dax. You gave up on Dax. Somehow these are the 3 most important pivotal events in Julian's mind. I mean...
Interesting.
Come on. Okay. That third one should not have been left in. That I didn't like.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have for women in the future because there weren't really any women in this episode. Yeah. It was just inside of Julian's mind. So anything that Kira did wasn't really Kira, and anything that Dax Setter did wasn't really Dax. So
I thought the alternative Cisco was really interesting.
Because he was just Julian?
Yeah. When he does that thing of flipping into a different character from the regular Cisco, it just shows a skill of an actor where you see him play this other character and it doesn't feel out of place. Or is that too much fanboying?
Well, I do think that is a little fanboying, but it's okay. You love Cisco. It's fine. But I think Cisco also is maybe the closest just kind of to himself, except he was talking about medical stuff instead of sciencey stuff, right? Whereas Dax was different than her normal self. She was more aggressive. Yeah. Kira was just an extended version of her angry self from season 1. Miles was completely not himself, though. I actually thought Cole Meany did a great job, too, in this episode. Yeah. That his acting was very good. In fact, I have that note that I thought he was really good.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Okay, this is kind of difficult because largely I think it's a throwaway episode. But there are some elements in it that I think are important later. But up to this point in the story, I don't think those things wouldn't really mean anything. As you point out, you only know it to the point you're at in the story. Right. So I'm giving it a thumbs up, but it's just a thumbs up. It could be a neutral, but again, we're seeing the better Julian, the more interesting Julian. And even though there are some issues with the episode, I'm still going to give it a thumbs up.
Interesting.
But it's very close to a neutral.
Okay. That's very interesting. I'm giving it a thumbs down.
Yeah.
Julian's problem seemed a little dopey to me. Like, his parents didn't approve of him being a professional tennis player, so he became a doctor, where his biggest problem was that he didn't want to be first in his class, so he was second. I mean, I don't know. Without any other information, those two things are really not interesting.
Right.
And I think I was supposed to be somehow really intrigued by those two facts, then plus the thing about Dax, that I was supposed to be really interested and intrigued by these things, but instead they left me really flat.
Right.
And then also, there were scenes where that aging makeup I thought was really bad. Sometimes it was okay.
Really?
But sometimes, I don't know, it looked really rough to me. And Star Trek has never been great at aging makeup. There's a couple of episodes where they age people.
Yes.
It's like, that is not good. And it's even worse on today's, gigantic television sets. The makeup on the alien was really good. The Lethian guy, the Lutheran alien. And the clothes on Garak were great. He was wearing a great outfit, as usual. Somebody's always got a nicely tailored, perfect costume on.
Well, in theory, he should probably have the best costume.
Right, he should, because he should try his little tailoring devices on himself.
Yeah.
And then, like I said earlier, Cole Meany did some great acting. I thought he wasn't in it a lot, but I thought he was very good.
Right.
But otherwise, I thought everything in this episode was terrible. It felt like a lot of navel gazing for a character that's already so full of himself.
Yeah.
I don't care about him. If you want me to care about him more, you need to develop him. Telling me that he should have been a professional tennis player and then he became a doctor, that's not development.
There are some better Julian episodes.
There need to be. This was not it.
Hang in there with Julian. There are some really good episodes with him.
Yes, people keep telling me. We even had an email recently saying, why are you bagging on my favorite character? I'm like, because there's some early stuff that is bad.
Well, he was written as such a bad cutout trope.
Yeah.
And this is the first season, like I say, it's like they've written a new character into the show.
Yeah.
Everybody else, I feel, has had 3 seasons to develop the character. Whereas Siddig has been stuck with, you basically are developing this new character in just this season.
Yeah, he's been much better in this season. There's just been a couple of times where we've slipped a little bit backwards. This was an opportunity to develop him more because you're in his brain.
Right.
But if this is all that's in his brain are these 3 things, I think I understand the problem.
No, I don't think it's truly representative of Bashir.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that is it for season 3, episode 18. Come back next week for episode 19. In the meantime, if you want to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com, where you can leave feedback there for individual episodes, and you can also listen to the other great podcasts on our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.